Amara Johnson's school life takes a dark turn when a teacher's prejudice turns personal. As whispers grow and tensions rise, Amara uncovers a shocking connection between her father, the district superintendent, and her tormentor's past. With the clock ticking, Amara must fight against injustice and expose the truth. But can she outsmart a system designed to silence her, or will her courage cost her everything? Based on a true story. Before we dive into this powerful story, let us know where you're tuning in from, and if you find it compelling, don't forget to hit subscribe. Amara Johnson wiped the sweat from her brow as she jogged to the center of the gym, the bouncing basketball echoing in the spacious room. Gym class was her favorite part of the day, a chance to shine and let her mind wander from the constant whispers of superintendent's daughter. Here, on the court, she was just Amara, quick on her feet, sharp with her passes, and confident in her moves. The game had started smoothly, her team quickly taking the lead, thanks in no small part to her skillful play. But as the clock ticked closer to the end, things began to shift. Kira, a girl from the opposing team, started throwing barbed comments between plays. "Bet you don't even have to try, huh, Amara?" Kira sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Daddy probably makes sure you're MVP every time." Amara froze for a fraction of a second but quickly shook it off, determined not to let the words distract her. "Let's focus on the game," she replied, keeping her voice calm. But the tension only grew. The next time Amara went for a layup, Kira shoved her hard, sending her sprawling to the polished wooden floor. A sharp pain radiated through Amara's wrist as she landed awkwardly. The whistle blew, but Ms. Rowland, their gym teacher, only frowned. "Amara, get up," Ms. Rowland said, her tone clipped and dismissive. "Stop making a scene." "She pushed me." Amara protested, cradling her wrist as she stood. "It's basketball," Ms. Rowland replied, folding her arms. "A little contact is part of the game. Or are we playing favorites today?" The words stung more than the fall. Around her, the gym was silent, the other students exchanging uneasy glances. Amara felt her face burn, humiliation bubbling under her skin. She wanted to yell, to scream that it wasn't fair, but she knew it would only make her look worse. Kira smirked as Amara limped back into position, muttering under her breath, "Guess Daddy can't protect you here." Amara clenched her fists but stayed silent. She finished the game, her movements stiff and mechanical, trying to keep her head high even as every step felt like a march through quicksand. After class, Amara made her way to the locker room, where she sat quietly, replaying the incident in her mind. Her wrist ached, but the sharp sting of Ms. Rowland's words hurt even more. As she tied her shoes, she overheard two classmates whispering nearby. "Did you see the way Ms. Rowland talked to her? She hates Amara." "It's obvious." "Yeah, but Amara gets everything handed to her, right? Maybe she deserves it." The word struck Amara like another blow. She stormed out of the locker room, ignoring the throbbing in her wrist and the hot tears threatening to spill. Her footsteps echoed as she made her way to the principal's office. She had to do something, anything, to stop this. Principal Lopez, a kind but firm woman with a warm smile, looked up as Amara walked in. "Amara, what's wrong?" Amara hesitated, torn between speaking her truth and keeping quiet. "There was an incident in gym class," she began carefully. "I got pushed during the game, and Ms. Rowland blamed me for it." Principal Lopez frowned. "Did she address the other students' actions?" "No," Amara replied, her voice firm. "She acted like I was the problem. And this isn't the first time. She always finds a way to make me feel small." Principal Lopez sighed, her expression thoughtful. "I'll look into it, Amara. Thank you for bringing this to my attention." But as Amara left the office, she couldn't shake the feeling that, looking into it, wouldn't be enough. Her father's advice echoed in her mind from years of dealing with difficult situations: if you want change, you have to fight for it yourself. That evening, at home, Amara sat at the dinner table with her father, Dr. Marcus Johnson, the superintendent of the district. She hadn't planned on bringing up the day's events, but her father immediately noticed her mood. "What's on your mind, Amara?" he asked, setting down his fork. She hesitated, then told him everything: the game, Ms. Rowland's reaction, the whispers. Her father's face darkened as he listened, his calm demeanor masking the storm behind his eyes. "Do you want me to step in?" he asked after a long pause. Amara shook her head. "I need to handle this on my own," she said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "But I think there's more going on with Ms. Rowland. She's not just unfair, there's something personal about the way she treats me." Dr. Johnson nodded, a flicker of pride in his expression. "If you need my help, you know where to find me. But if you're taking this on yourself, be smart about it. Gather evidence, stay calm, and don't let her see you sweat." Amara nodded, feeling a fire ignite in her chest. She didn't just want to prove Ms. Rowland wrong, she wanted to uncover the truth behind her actions and make sure no one else faced the same humiliation. As she lay in bed that night, the day's events replayed in her mind, solidifying her resolve. This wasn't just about a basketball game or one bad teacher. It was about standing up for herself and exposing the cracks in a system that let people like Ms. Rowland thrive. Tomorrow, she decided, would be the start of her fight for justice. The next day, Amara walked into her history classroom with her head held high, determined not to let yesterday's events define her. Ms. Rowland was already at the whiteboard, scribbling notes about the civil rights movement. Amara's heart clenched at the irony of discussing justice and equality in a classroom run by someone like her. As the lecture began, Ms. Rowland's tone shifted from neutral to condescending. She asked a question about nonviolent resistance, and when Amara raised her hand, Ms. Rowland smirked. "Ah, Amara," she said, her voice dripping with mock enthusiasm. "Let's hear from our resident expert. Tell us, how does it feel to always have everything handed to you?" A ripple of quiet laughter spread through the room. Amara froze, heat creeping up her neck as her classmates turned to look at her. She forced herself to stay composed. "Nonviolent resistance," Amara began, ignoring the laughter, "is about standing firm in your beliefs without resorting to the same harmful tactics as your oppressor." Ms. Rowland's expression tightened. "Interesting interpretation," she said, dismissing Amara's answer with a wave of her hand. "Though perhaps it's easier to preach nonviolence when you've never faced real struggle." Amara's fists clenched under the desk. Her classmates exchanged awkward glances, some whispering among themselves. Amara noticed Jordan, a quiet student in the back, watching the exchange with a furrowed brow. At lunch, Amara sat with her usual group of friends. The incident from history class hung over her like a cloud. "She hates me," Amara finally said, stabbing at her salad with her fork. "It's not just me imagining things, right?" Her best friend Kayla shook her head. "No way. She's been targeting you since she started here. Everyone can see it." "Then why doesn't anyone say anything?" Amara asked, her voice rising. "Why am I the only one standing up to her?" Kayla hesitated. "Because your dad's the superintendent. People think you'll be fine no matter what she does." Amara's stomach twisted. "So, what? I'm just supposed to sit back and take it because of who my dad is?" "I'm not saying that," Kayla said quickly. "But maybe you should let your dad handle it. That's his job, right?" Amara shook her head. "This isn't just about me. She's creating a toxic environment for everyone. Someone has to call her out." Later that afternoon, during math class, Amara noticed something strange. Ms. Rowland was standing outside the door, talking to the math teacher in hushed tones. Amara couldn't hear what they were saying, but the way Ms. Rowland glanced into the room every few seconds made her uneasy. When the bell rang, Amara lingered near the doorway, pretending to tie her shoe. "I'm just saying," Ms. Rowland's voice carried over, "we need to be careful about students like her. They're quick to play the victim card." Amara's blood ran cold. She ducked into the hallway before they could notice her, her mind racing. This wasn't just personal animosity, Ms. Rowland was actively spreading her bias to other teachers. How many of them already believed her lies? By the time she got home, Amara was seething. She retreated to her room, pulling out her laptop to research Ms. Rowland's background. If this wasn't her first teaching job, maybe there was a pattern. Maybe this had happened before. An hour of searching turned up something promising, a vague mention of Ms. Rowland leaving her previous district under unclear circumstances. A news article reported that she had been transferred after a controversial incident involving a disciplinary action against a black student. Amara's heart raced as she read the article again. This wasn't a coincidence. Ms. Rowland had a history, and Amara was determined to find out more. The next day, Amara arrived at school early and made her way to the library. She knew Principal Lopez kept records on all the teachers, and while she didn't have access to them directly, she could ask questions. The librarian, Ms. Chong, was a close friend of Amara's family and had always been kind to her. "Miss Chong," Amara began hesitantly, "I need to ask you something about one of the teachers." "Ms. Rowland. Do you know why she came to this school?" Ms. Chong frowned. "Why do you ask?" "It's just," Amara hesitated. "I've noticed some things. And I found an article saying she left her old school after an incident." Ms. Chang's face softened. "Amara, you need to be careful. Teachers like Ms. Rowland are protected by the system, even when they shouldn't be. But if you think there's something wrong, you should keep digging. The truth has a way of coming to light." In gym class later that day, the hostility reached a boiling point. Ms. Rowland had paired Amara with Kira again for a group activity. Predictably, Kira started with her usual taunts. "Careful, Amara," she said loudly, drawing the attention of the class. "Wouldn't want to mess up again and get Daddy to bail you out." Amara opened her mouth to retort, but Ms. Rowland cut in. "Kira, focus on the task. And Amara," she added, her tone sharp, "try to stay out of trouble this time." The humiliation burned in Amara's chest, but she kept quiet. She was starting to realize that Ms. Rowland's behavior wasn't just about her, it was about maintaining power and control. If Amara wanted to fight back, she needed to do it smartly. As she walked out of the gym, she noticed Jordan lingering by the door. "You okay?" Jordan asked quietly. Amara hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. I'm fine." But as she looked at Jordan's concerned expression, an idea sparked in her mind. Maybe she didn't have to do this alone. The hallway was nearly empty as Amara approached Jordan's locker after school. Her heart raced. She had always seen Jordan as quiet and reserved, someone who preferred to stay out of the spotlight. But something in the way Jordan had lingered after gym class made Amara think they might be willing to help. "Jordan," Amara called, her voice steady despite her nerves. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Jordan glanced up, surprised. "What's up?" Amara hesitated, then blurted out, "I think Ms. Rowland is targeting me, and maybe others, too." "You've seen it, right?" Jordan adjusted their backpack, glancing around the hallway before nodding. "Yeah. It's hard not to notice." Encouraged, Amara pressed on. "I need to prove it. If I can show that she's treating students unfairly, especially minority students, then maybe I can stop her." Jordan sighed. "That's going to be tough. Teachers like her, they know how to hide behind rules. But you're not wrong. I've been keeping track." Amara blinked. "What do you mean?" Jordan hesitated, then pulled out their phone. I've been recording her during class. Not every time, but enough to have a few examples of the way she talks to you and some of the other students." Amara's jaw dropped. "You've been recording her?" "Why?" Jordan shrugged. "Because someone needed to. You're not the only one she's messed with, Amara. I've seen how she talks to students who look like us. And I figured, maybe someday, it'd be useful." Amara felt a surge of gratitude. "Can I see the videos?" Jordan handed over their phone. Amara scrolled through a few clips, her stomach churning as she watched Ms. Rowland belittle students in subtle but undeniable ways. In one video, she dismissed a student's question with a snide remark about paying attention for once. In another, she questioned whether Amara even deserved to be in advanced classes. This is exactly what I need," Amara said, her voice firm. "Thank you, Jordan. You have no idea how much this means." Jordan gave a small smile. "Just make sure it counts." That night, Amara sat at her desk, reviewing the videos Jordan had sent her. She jotted down notes, creating a timeline of Ms. Rowland's behavior. But as she worked, a nagging thought crept into her mind: why did Ms. Rowland seem to have such a personal grudge against her? She opened her laptop and typed "Ms. Rowland previous district" into the search bar. After scrolling through a few irrelevant links, she found an article that made her pause. It was from a local news outlet, dated 2 years ago, and the headline read, "Controversial Teacher Transfer After Allegations of Discrimination." Amara's breath caught as she read further. The article described a teacher who had been accused of unfairly disciplining black students and creating a hostile classroom environment. Though the teacher's name wasn't mentioned, the timeline and location matched Ms. Rowland's background perfectly. Her hands trembled as she dug deeper, finding references to a disciplinary review. Buried in the comments of one article, she found a name: Dr. Marcus Johnson. Her father. The next morning, Amara confronted her father at breakfast. "Dad," she began, holding up her phone with the article pulled up. "Why didn't you tell me you knew Ms. Rowland?" Dr. Johnson's expression darkened. "Where did you find that?" "It doesn't matter," Amara said, her voice rising. "You knew she had a history, and you didn't warn me? She's targeting me because of you, isn't she?" Her father sighed, setting down his coffee. "Amara, I didn't think she'd bring her grudge here. When I was superintendent in her old district, I recommended disciplinary action after multiple complaints were filed against her. I didn't expect her to come to this school." Amara's heart pounded. "So she's here because of you. And now she's using me to get back at you." Dr. Johnson nodded gravely. "It seems that way. But Amara, this isn't your fight. Let me handle it." "No," Amara said firmly. "This is my school, my classmates, and my name she's dragging through the mud. I have evidence, Dad. I'm going to fight this." Her father looked at her for a long moment, pride flickering in his eyes. "If you're sure about this, I'll support you. But you need to be careful. People like her know how to twist the truth." "I'm ready," Amara said, her voice unwavering. "She's not going to get away with this." Back at school, Amara shared her findings with Jordan. Together, they began piecing together a detailed case against Ms. Rowland. Jordan even reached out to a few other students who had experienced Ms. Rowland's bias, encouraging them to share their stories anonymously. But Ms. Rowland seemed to sense the growing resistance. During history class, she fixed Amara with a cold smile. "Amara, why don't you come to the front and share your insights with the class?" Amara stood, keeping her expression neutral. As she spoke, Ms. Rowland interrupted repeatedly, nitpicking her words and questioning her understanding of the material. By the time Amara sat down, she felt drained but resolute. Every interaction with Ms. Rowland only fueled her determination. As the week went on, the tension in the classroom grew. Ms. Rowland's behavior became more calculated, her comments sharper and more pointed. But Amara and Jordan continued their work in secret, compiling evidence and gathering allies. By Friday, they had a binder full of documented incidents, student testimonies, and video clips. Amara looked at Jordan as they finished organizing their materials. "This is it," she said. "We're ready." Jordan nodded. "Let's take her down." Amara sat outside her father's office, clutching the binder of evidence she and Jordan had painstakingly compiled. Her heart raced, not just from nerves but from the weight of what was at stake. The classroom wasn't the only thing on the line anymore. This fight was about exposing a deeper problem and making sure it didn't happen again. When her father finally opened the door, his expression was a mix of concern and determination. "Come in, Amara." Dr. Johnson listened intently as Amara laid out her findings. She started with the video evidence Jordan had collected, showing Ms. Rowland's microaggressions and targeted behavior toward students of color. Then she presented student testimonies, each one painting a clearer picture of a pattern of discrimination. Finally, she showed the article about Ms. Rowland's controversial transfer and her father's prior involvement. "This isn't just about me," Amara concluded. "It's about how someone like her keeps getting away with this. We have to stop her." Her father leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "This is compelling," he admitted. "But taking action against a teacher isn't simple. If we move too fast, it could backfire. People might accuse you, and me, of having a personal agenda." Amara's jaw tightened. "So what? We're just supposed to let her keep doing this?" "No," her father said firmly. "But we have to be smart. I'll initiate a formal investigation, but these things take time. And with Ms. Rowland's probation ending in 3 days, she could become a permanent employee before we're able to act." Amara's heart sank. 3 days? That's not enough time. Dr. Johnson sighed. "I'll do what I can, but you need to be careful. If you push too hard, she'll retaliate." Amara left his office feeling a mix of frustration and determination. 3 days. She couldn't wait for the system to work at its own pace. If she wanted change, she'd have to force the issue herself. Back at school, Amara noticed the shift immediately. Ms. Rowland seemed more on edge, her usual condescension laced with sharper jabs. During history class, she assigned Amara to a group with Kira and 2 other students who had sided with Ms. Rowland during the basketball incident. As the group worked on their assignment, Kira leaned over and whispered, "So, what's the plan? Gonna get Daddy to fire her too?" Amara glared at her. "I don't need my dad to handle my battles." Kira smirked. "Sure you don't. Everyone knows you're his little princess. No wonder Ms. Rowland doesn't like you." Amara bit back a retort, focusing instead on the paper in front of her. Letting Kira get under her skin wouldn't help. But as the day went on, the whispers and sideways glances from her classmates became harder to ignore. Ms. Rowland's rumors were working, turning people against her. By the time the final bell rang, Amara felt drained. She met Jordan in the library, where they reviewed their strategy for the next day. "She's turning everyone against me," Amara said, her voice tinged with frustration. "If this keeps up, no one will believe us, even with the evidence." Jordan nodded thoughtfully. "We need to shift the narrative. What if we go public? Share the videos with the student body?" Amara hesitated. "That's risky. If she finds out, she'll come after us even harder." "But it could also get people on our side," Jordan countered. "If they see what she's really like, they'll have to listen." Amara took a deep breath. "Okay. Let's do it." The next morning, Amara and Jordan arrived at school early. They uploaded the videos to a private social media page and sent the link to a few trusted friends, asking them to share it with others. By lunchtime, the videos had gone viral among the students. In the cafeteria, conversations buzzed as students watched the clips on their phones. Amara overheard snippets of reactions. "Wow, she really said that? That's messed up. How did she even get hired?" But not everyone was convinced. Kira, standing at the edge of a crowd, loudly proclaimed, "This is just Amara trying to get attention. You know how she is." The cafeteria fell silent as Ms. Rowland entered, her face tight with barely contained fury. She marched straight to Amara's table. "Amara," she said sharply, her voice echoing in the room. "My office. Now." Amara stood, her heart pounding but her head held high. She followed Ms. Rowland to the teacher's lounge, where the teacher closed the door and turned on her. "I know what you've been doing," Ms. Rowland hissed. "Sharing doctored videos, spreading lies about me. Do you have any idea how serious this is?" "They're not lies," Amara said calmly. "And they're not doctored. They're the truth." Ms. Rowland leaned in closer, her voice low and threatening. "You think your little stunt will work? You're just a spoiled girl hiding behind her daddy. No one will believe you." Amara met her gaze, unflinching. "We'll see." The confrontation left Amara shaken but resolute. As she walked back to class, she noticed a few students giving her encouraging nods. Others avoided her gaze. The battle lines were being drawn, but Amara knew she had to see it through. By the end of the day, Dr. Johnson called Amara into his office. "Ms. Rowland has filed a formal complaint against you," he said, his voice heavy. "She's accusing you of harassment and spreading false information." Amara clenched her fists. "She's trying to discredit me." Dr. Johnson nodded. "We'll handle this carefully. But be prepared, this fight isn't over yet." Amara left his office with her head high, despite the weight on her shoulders. Ms. Rowland was playing dirty, but Amara was determined to stay one step ahead. Amara sat in her father's office, clutching the binder of evidence. The room felt colder than usual, the weight of Ms. Rowland's formal complaint hanging over her like a storm cloud. Dr. Johnson paced behind his desk, his usually calm demeanor replaced by visible tension. "The district has opened an inquiry," he said finally, his voice low. "They're reviewing the videos and testimonies. But Ms. Rowland isn't backing down. She's claiming you've manipulated the footage and incited a campaign to ruin her career." Amara's heart sank. "So, she's doubling down on her lies?" "She's trying to save herself," her father replied. "But the evidence is on your side. Stay strong, Amara. This isn't over." Amara nodded, determination flickering in her chest. She wasn't about to let Ms. Rowland twist the truth any further. The next day, the entire school buzzed with rumors about the investigation. In history class, Ms. Rowland acted as though nothing was amiss, delivering her lecture with a forced calmness. But the tension was palpable. Every time she looked at Amara, her eyes narrowed with thinly veiled anger. At lunch, Jordan slid into the seat across from Amara. "I just heard," they said in a hushed tone. "The district is sending someone to observe Ms. Rowland tomorrow." Amara's eyebrows shot up. "You're kidding." "Nope," Jordan replied. "Apparently, your dad made sure it happened." Amara exhaled. It was a small victory, but it meant the wheels of accountability were finally turning. Now, she just had to make sure the truth came to light. The next morning, a district observer arrived at the school, sitting silently at the back of Ms. Rowland's classroom. The teacher's usual sharp remarks were notably absent, her behavior uncharacteristically professional. But Amara knew the truth couldn't be hidden forever. Her chance came during a group activity. Ms. Rowland approached Amara's table, her smile strained. "Let's see how you're contributing today, Amara," she said, her tone dripping with false politeness. Amara looked up calmly. I'm doing my part, Ms. Rowland. Just like everyone else. The teacher's jaw tightened, but she moved on without another word. Amara noticed the observer jot something down, a flicker of hope sparking inside her. That afternoon, Dr. Johnson called Amara into his office. The district investigator was there, along with Principal Lopez and Ms. Rowland. Amara's stomach twisted as she took a seat. We've reviewed the evidence, the investigator began, their tone neutral. The videos, testimonies, and Ms. Rowland's history at her previous district paint a concerning picture. Ms. Rowland, do you have anything to say in your defense? Ms. Rowland's face was pale but defiant. I've dedicated my career to teaching, she said. These accusations are baseless, and I refuse to be judged on edited videos and hearsay. Dr. Johnson leaned forward, his expression stern. The videos aren't edited, and the testimonies align with your documented history of similar behavior. This isn't about one student, Ms. Rowland. It's about a pattern. Ms. Rowland's composure cracked. She spat, turning to Dr. Johnson. This is your doing. You've been out to get me ever since the last district. You ruined my career then, and now you're using your daughter to do it again. The room fell silent. Amara's voice broke through the tension. You ruined your own career, she said, her tone steady. You've been targeting students like me because of your own prejudice and bitterness. And now everyone sees it. Ms. Rowland glared at her, but the fight had drained from her eyes. The investigator stood. Ms. Rowland, your actions are in clear violation of district policies. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. The words hung in the air as Ms. Rowland stood, her expression a mix of anger and defeat. She left without another word. After the meeting, Dr. Johnson placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. You did it, he said quietly. We did it, Amara corrected. But there's still work to do. In the weeks that followed, the district launched a review of its hiring practices and implemented new bias training for teachers. Amara's actions sparked a broader conversation about systemic issues in the school, proving that one voice could make a difference. As Amara walked through the halls, she felt a newfound sense of confidence. She had stood up not just for herself, but for others who didn't always have the chance to. And that, she realized, was worth everything.